The invisible toll. How you are paying for the AI revolution. Look at the device in your hand. You open an application. You type a simple prompt. You ask an artificial intelligence to write an email, to summarize a massive legal document, or to instantly generate a hyper-realistic image. In 3 seconds, the answer seamlessly appears on your screen. It feels like magic. It feels completely weightless. It feels free. We have been conditioned for the last 20 years to believe that the internet lives in a place called the cloud. A floating, invisible digital space that requires nothing but a Wi-Fi connection. But the cloud is not in the sky. The cloud is a physical place. It is a massive, windowless concrete fortress sitting on hundreds of acres of cleared land. Inside that fortress are thousands of high-density servers running at maximum capacity, 24 hours a day. These servers are processing trillions of calculations per second. And in doing so, they generate an astronomical amount of physical heat. Cooling those servers and powering those next-generation processors requires a volume of electricity that is almost impossible to comprehend. The artificial intelligence revolution requires more power than anything humanity has built since the industrial age. To put this into perspective, just one major utility company on the East Coast is currently managing a future data center pipeline of 51,000 megawatts. That is enough electricity to power 12,750,000 American homes. And someone, eventually, has to pay the electric bill for all of this. The technology companies will tell you they are handling it. They will point to press conferences, green energy pledges, and massive corporate investments. But right now, a quiet mathematical mechanism is operating deep inside the American utility grid. A highly complex, perfectly legal system designed to quietly shift the cost of this multi-billion-dollar infrastructure upgrade away from the most valuable technology corporations on Earth, and route it directly into your monthly power bill. To understand how this invisible transfer of wealth actually works, we have to look at the ground zero of the data center boom. We have to step away from the abstract idea of artificial intelligence and look at the physical reality. Meet John. John is a retired homeowner living in Manassas, Virginia. He has lived in the exact same suburban house for nearly 40 years. His daily routine doesn't change. He doesn't have a high-powered server farm in his basement. He doesn't run a manufacturing plant from his garage. For decades, John's monthly electricity bill hovered predictably around $100. But John happens to live in a region of Northern Virginia that the tech industry quietly refers to as Data Center Alley. Over the last few years, the landscape around John's home began to change. Vast tracts of forest and farmland were purchased. Massive power lines were erected. Substation after substation was built. And a low, mechanical hum became a permanent feature of the local environment. The power grid in John's state was being pushed to its absolute physical limits to support the explosive, frantic growth of artificial intelligence. Then came January of 2026. John opened his monthly utility envelope and saw a number that didn't make any logical sense. $281. His bill had almost tripled overnight. He checked his thermostat. He checked his appliances. He checked his meter. Nothing had changed inside his house. His personal consumption was exactly the same as it had been the year before. But everything had changed outside of his house. When John's story, and stories from thousands of people just like him, started hitting the local evening news, citizens got angry. The political pressure began to mount. And the global technology industry realized they had a massive public relations disaster on their hands. If the American middle class realized they were subsidizing the AI boom, the backlash could result in strict federal regulations. So, the industry orchestrated a brilliant, highly visible solution. On March 4, 2026, the executives of 7 major technology companies stood side by side at a highly publicized White House ceremony. They signed a document called the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It was a beautiful piece of political theater. By July of that year, the pledge had expanded to nearly 300 signatories across 23 states. The administration proudly announced that this agreement covered 80% of all power delivered to United States homes and businesses. The companies publicly promised that the American residential ratepayer would not subsidize their massive energy needs. They committed to build, bring, or buy their own power to protect ordinary citizens like John. The financial media applauded. The politicians took their photos. The public felt a sense of relief. The problem seemed to be solved. But if you look past the headlines, if you read the fine print of how this pledge interacts with the actual, boring laws of utility economics, the illusion completely falls apart. Let's look at the first massive loophole in the system. The companies that signed the pledge at the White House were the software giants. The household names. The hyperscalers. But these famous companies do not always build or own their own physical data centers. A massive percentage of AI infrastructure is actually built by third-party real estate landlords. These are highly specialized infrastructure firms known as colocation operators. These real estate companies buy the land, pour the concrete, build the massive cooling systems, and then lease the finished server space back to the tech giants. And the colocation operators never signed the White House pledge. They were not invited to the ceremony. In fact, when the federal government recently attempted to propose new rules to force massive power users to pay their fair share of grid upgrades, they wrote the regulations with an incredible exception. They explicitly carved out colocation agreements from the definition of a large load. The very mechanism used to build a massive portion of the physical internet was deliberately left outside the rules. It is a regulatory blind spot hiding in plain sight. But the second loophole is much larger. And much more expensive. Let's pause for a reality check. According to an official report by Virginia's own Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, the cost of grid infrastructure required specifically for data centers is projected to raise the average residential customer's bill by $444 a year by 2040. That is not the cost of electricity. That is just the cost of the grid. So, we have to ask the logical question. How does a homeowner's bill go up by hundreds of dollars a year if the tech companies publicly promised to build and buy their own power? It all comes down to the brutal, unforgiving math of the utility grid. When a tech giant signs a pledge to build its own power, they often build massive, private gas turbines right next to their newly constructed data centers. In the energy sector, this is called going behind the meter. By early 2026, independent analysis showed there was nearly 97 gigawatts of private gas turbine capacity earmarked specifically for these behind-the-meter data centers. When a corporation does this, they largely stop buying electricity from the public grid. On the surface, this sounds like exactly what we want them to do. They are self-sufficient. They aren't draining the public power supply. But here is the hidden mechanical trap. The power grid is not just about the invisible electricity flowing through the wires. It is about the physical wires themselves. The hundreds of miles of high-voltage transmission lines. The heavy steel poles. The complex substations. It requires a multi-billion-dollar physical infrastructure just to maintain the system and keep it from collapsing. For the last century, utility companies have recovered the massive cost of that fixed infrastructure by charging everyone a tiny fee on every single kilowatt-hour of electricity they use. It is a shared pool. Everyone pays a little bit to maintain the machine. But when a massive data center goes behind the meter and stops buying grid power, they suddenly stop paying into that shared infrastructure pool. Here is the problem. The poles, the wires, and the substations still cost the exact same amount of money to maintain. The utility company's fixed costs do not disappear just because a tech giant built a private generator. So, the utility company has to recover those massive fixed costs from a smaller pool of remaining customers. And who is left in that pool? Ordinary residential ratepayers. People like John. The tech company technically kept its White House promise. They built their own power. They broke no laws. They violated no pledges. And yet, John's bill still goes up. This is a well-documented phenomenon known in the energy sector as the utility death spiral. The largest, wealthiest, most energy-hungry corporations on Earth legally exit the system to protect their profit margins, leaving the middle class holding the bag for the maintenance of the entire national electrical grid. There is no federal agency, no state utility commission, and no politician that attached a legal penalty to the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It was a voluntary press release, not a binding contract. Furthermore, the public isn't just subsidizing the grid. They are subsidizing the tax base. In just one recent fiscal year, blanket tax exemptions for data centers cost the state of Virginia nearly $1 billion in lost revenue. 82% of that financial benefit flowed to just 5 massive companies. When $1 billion of corporate tax revenue disappears, the local government doesn't just stop spending money. They recover that deficit by quietly raising property taxes and local levies on the citizens who live there. So, what do we do with this information? The goal here is not to become anti-technology. Artificial intelligence is going to revolutionize medicine, engineering, and logistics. It is a necessary progression. But the goal is to stop being the silent, uncompensated sponsor of that progression. You must understand the system to protect your own household's bottom line. Action step number 1. Audit your utility bill's riders. Take out your last electric bill and look past the total amount due. Look closely for line items labeled transmission riders, infrastructure recovery, or delivery charges. These are the exact places where corporate grid upgrades are quietly passed down to you. Understanding exactly what you are paying for is the first step to pushing back. Action step number 2. Pay attention to your local utility commission. Your electricity rates are not decided by the president in Washington, D.C. They are decided in boring, poorly attended, highly technical meetings at your state's Public Utility Commission. Right now, in states across the country, consumer advocates are fighting to implement something called large load tariffs. These are specific, localized rules that force massive data centers to pay for the new infrastructure they demand, regardless of corporate pledges. Find out if your state is debating a large load tariff, and throw your support behind the consumer advocacy groups pushing for it. Action step number 3. Insulate yourself from the grid. If the largest corporations in the world are hedging their future energy costs by going behind the meter, you need to think about your own micro-hedges. Whether that means aggressively upgrading your home's energy efficiency, exploring local community solar programs, or installing smart panels to throttle your own usage during peak pricing hours. The cost of maintaining the legacy grid is only going to rise as the heavy users exit the system. You must strategically reduce your exposure to it. The American electrical grid was built over a century ago as a public good. It was designed to power homes, hospitals, and schools. Today, it is being rapidly reconfigured to power the most advanced artificial intelligence models in human history. The technology giants are racing to build the future, and they are generating trillions of dollars in unprecedented wealth along the way. But when the cameras are turned off, and the press releases are filed away, the physical cost of that future is quietly being routed right into your mailbox. The algorithm doesn't pay for electricity. You do.